Welcome to Real Estate 360 with real estate expert Kenn Renner. Welcome back. Good to see you. All the things. How's business?
Sandy, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
All right, great.
I can't complain.
Take any vacations recently?
Where was I? No, not really. I went somewhere, but I can't remember where.
Hey, you know, it's really good to go on vacation like you do to South Dakota, where it's a really nice place to do, but you can also do business there.
Right, it is. The Black Hills of South Dakota are going to blow up. They're the next Colorado.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and that's what I do is I get in front of these motions of people moving into these areas and try to get in front of the market, get ahead of that wave.
You've done a good job of it in the past. Santa Rita Ranch is a good example where you live.
Avery Ranch, starting in like 1999, I started selling homes in Santa Rita Ranch, which is the next subdivision up, and I started selling. But I've sold over 300 homes in those subdivisions, so total. So yeah, it's been really good, and so I'm heading out to Florida next week because I'm going to be exploring. I've got some really good connections with some great builders. I'm going to take my business model that's worked so well for me here in Central Texas, and add a new market, which is Florida, because my clients have been asking for it. So we'll talk about that on the next.
A lot of
podcast.
people moving to Texas and Florida. Geez, I wonder why.
I wonder why.
Yeah,
at the ABOR meeting that Grant Cardone came out and spoke at, he said they asked him what markets. You know, Texas is definitely a market that people want to. He was talking about multifamily, but he goes anywhere in Florida. Yeah. So, you know, I've been wanting to get to Florida for a while because I have friends and people have been asking me about that market. Now I have a couple really good builder inns out there. I'm going to be driving the whole area. I'm going to hit 9 different markets in Florida.
Wow.
So, yeah, but we're still super bullish on what's going on here in Texas. We've been doing great with that, with our new duplexes and things like that. And also one of the things about, you know, Florida as opposed to Texas, the tax rates are a lot lower.
Right.
But, you know, the good thing is the tax rates did come down. If you go to your tax record, you can see all of our properties, the tax rates dropped anywhere from 0.5% to almost a full %. And so
we kind of covered that in the last episode.
Yeah, we have a whole episode on that. And so that really helps. And so we're looking at our escrow analysis. All my payments are dropping because when they reanalyze it, they can only keep so much in escrow.
Right.
But I want to take this time because I know we've got a lot of information to cover, and we won't get into the new markets right now. But is the NAR settlement? That's the big.
It's a big deal. A lot of people talk about it.
800-pound gorilla. I want to clear up some things on that because there's a lot of misinformation about that, and so people come to us for the wisdom and the knowledge of what this is all about. But we'll first start with the Austin stats. Just go over that really quick. Good news is it's heading in the right direction. Median price is $443,000. Up 1.2% from last year at this time. Sales are up 4% from gross volume sales up 4% from last year, over $1.2 billion. So $1.2 billion in just 1 month in Austin. So it's a pretty robust market. Days on market are more normal with 83 days on the market. So
I think that's an important number for people to know.
It's 3 months. Right?
How long to expect their house to be on the market?
Right.
That's important.
Yeah, and there's a whole new. A lot of things changing with what's coming down the pipe, but 83 days is the average, so that means
some before, some after.
Yeah, so be patient. You have to be patient, very creative, especially when you're fighting against these builders and all these incentives that they have, and get into that in a second here too. So, but let's talk about the NAR National Association of Realtors settlement. That's $418 million. That some class action plaintiffs and their attorneys really were suing people over suing the NAR and a lot of other companies, including the big ones like Keller Williams, over what they deemed as through the MLS as an antitrust commission type of situation, where it was basically that they were saying that because NAR and MLS required co-broking opportunities in the MLS, that was artificially raising the price of the house, and so they pretty much have told that they're not going to be allowed to advertise any kind of co-broker commission in the MLS starting as soon as early as July. Mm-hmm. So and that's to settle that whole thing, so they don't keep coming after every individual realtor for this commission dispute. It's really a big fiasco. is what it is. It's going to be so disruptive to the market and the business. I've been in the business 40 years. This is the biggest change that's come along since I've been in the business.
What you mentioned, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Like what?
Well, they're saying that it's going to keep that commissions are now going to be negotiable. Well, they always were negotiable. In fact, one of the first things they teach you in real estate school is that there is no set. You can get in a lot of trouble of saying that the set rate is 6%. That's not the way it worked. So even in the MLS, the way the system worked is that the seller agreed to pay a percentage of the sales price of the house. Whether it be 3%, which is normal, or 2.5%, they would pay that to help the buyer get representation. Because the buyers need the representation really as much as the sellers do. But buyers don't really usually have a lot of extra cash to pay for their own representation. So that's the way they started, and it was called dual agency in the 80s, where both agents still represented the seller of what they called a sub-agent. That changed in the 90s, where the AGs came in and said, Attorney General said, hey, we feel that if the buyer's paying for the house, they're paying for the commission in the price of the house, they should have representation. And that's where buyer's agency was birthed. And for the last 20 years, almost 30 years, it's worked. And so because of
it's worked for the realtors.
Well, yeah, but it's worked for the realtors, but the system worked because there was always still the negotiable on the, but really people are saying, like, who's really paying the commission? Who comes to the closing table with money, the buyer or the seller in most cases? Right. The buyer's providing the financing, the buyer's providing the down payment. And that's what my point is that the market sets the value of the house, not the commissions. So they're saying that sellers are going to, now that they don't have to be forced to pay a commission, the buyers have to find their own, that they'll be able to net more. Well, what's really happened is that, or they could put their house on for less. What does that do? It takes that money out for representation to keep the deal together. I mean, right now I'm dealing with today an appraisal problem and had an appraisal problem a week ago. And it took expertise to get in there and roll up the sleeves and find out why the appraisal was bad. What about inspections? You're going to have the selling agent be involved in all that. So let's talk a little bit about that. I disagree that raise the price of the house. I believe that the market sets supply and demand, sets the value of the house. So what sellers means they don't have to offer concessions or commissions to a buyer's agent as the value is set by the market. Buyers will now have to seek their own agents, and they'll have to pay their own agents, or if the seller is getting concessions, they will be able to use some of that concession, but it's all now contractual, not set by the MLS. So buyers are going to have to, or buyer's agents, if they're going to get the seller to pay any of that commission, are going to have to write it into the contract. And the flip side of that is if the seller's not offering a commission, then the buyer has a buyer's agency agreement, which is now required before you even go show a property, that will require that the buyer would be paying that fee. And the problem with that, once again, is that it's no longer in the sales price of the house, which allows it to be financed. It's now could be an extra chunk of change that the buyer would have to come up at closing with. So here's the dilemma. Okay, so since most buyers are not going to want to pay directly to their buyer's agent, is that they got a couple of choices. If they hope that the seller will pay a commission or concession towards that, or they're going to have to go directly up against the seller themselves and go directly to the listing agent and be able to negotiate their own sale and negotiate their own and be at the mercy of the listing agent, whose fiduciary responsibility is the sellers, not the buyers. And so the buyer gets no representation, and then the seller, who usually is hiring a hired gun, somebody who's experienced, a shrewd negotiating agent. That's what you want, That's what I like to call, be shrewd negotiator. Everything is for the favor of the person, the fiduciary responsibility. So buyers will have to go directly, if they go directly to seller. Also, the listing agents will have to do both sides of the work, right? Having help with the inspection and help with this and that. But there's so many things that are involved in an average home buying transaction. You need to have a confidant that you can ask. And what about this? And so what about the inspection? Where are my rights? And so there's going to be it's a real problem, because if you have no representation on one side and then you have representation on the other side, you set yourself up for some pretty potential liability for if things go wrong. So it's for sale by owners, for instance, without representation are 3 times more likely. The sellers are or the parties are 3 times more likely to get into liability to a lawsuit than a represented transaction. So in a nutshell, there's a lot more to it. I don't have time to go into this in our short time here, but I'm going to say who it hurts, and this is where I cut my teeth. When I came to Austin in 1993, I started a class called let's say a home buying crash course, and so I taught people how to buy homes, and especially first time home buyers, because they didn't have the knowledge. And so I was like, I'll show you how to do it. And so I actually wrote a whole book based on that. And there's 168 secrets and techniques in this book.
I read the book. It's good. Yeah, it is. It's good.
Okay. So this is, I was going to give you another one. So, yeah. So anyways, there's a lot in there. And so this is very helpful if you want to DIY it. You want to go ahead, go up against the seller yourself. I highly recommend having your own representation. But I'll give this to our audience free. You just email me and I'll send you at my cost, because I believe the information that's in here is really going to help. Now we're going to rewrite it, get the second edition out because it was written in 2011, but it was meant to be evergreen. So most of the information is good in there. But so the affordability is going to worsen because, especially for first timers, because they don't really have the money. FHA is how much? 3.5% down, right? Then you got your closing costs, which usually you can get a seller to contribute or pay. Like builders will pay all of the closing costs, but you still have your 3.5% down. If the buyer has to now pay his agent, and if the buyer has agreed to pay at 3%, whatever it may be, because it's negotiable, that's going to double the cost of getting into a home. That's going to take buyers, especially first timers, out of the market. Because they're going to say, oh, heck, at the water cooler. Now I have no representation. I've got to buy a house, and I got to pay the realtor an extra $8,000 or whatever it is. And so that really messes with things. Now, it can still be, I always tell people, be calm. We'll just put in the sales price of the house. We'll get the seller to pay it, but it's not set and never was set. But it is. So that's kind of, we have a lot of other issues that are coming up with that too. People that are involved in this. But the bottom line is that if I had a $10,000 commission, if they had to pay it at closing, that's a huge sum. But if you pay it over 30 years on a mortgage, it's $59 a month. So, that's that. So buyers agents are going to be hurt as well. And there's going to be a big attrition in the market. And there should be, because the buyers agents, and one of the good things out of this is they have to prove their worth when they go into a buyer's agency agreement, so they have to know their value. And I think a lot of the newbies and the people that are only selling one house or no houses a year, which by the way is 49% of the realtors, just one or none for the whole year, they're going to probably get out of the business. But there's going to be really, for us that are educators and know all this stuff and have 40 years of experience, we'll be able to help our clients and improve our value. And that's why I did the classes all the way back then. It wasn't waiting for one of these settlements to help educate.
Right.
And I've closed thousands of homes off of these classes. I do them in the builder's model, which is great. I have several builders that we've worked with in the past and let me do the presentations there. I get all the marketing done. I get people into in there, and then we educate them. And we're going to talk a little bit about the buyers, the builders, how this is going to help them. The buyers now have to go on every listing that they're showing. They have to ask the selling agent, if there's a concession for commission or anything like that in there before they even go show it. Or they may not get paid, because if their buyer doesn't have the money to pay them, then that house is not going to get shown, at least not by them. And then the buyer is at the mercy of the lion's den of going directly to the seller with no representation. So it's not good for the buyers, not good for the buyer's agents, not good for lenders. As you know, there's purchase concessions. There's limitations on how much concession a seller can pay. Those rules are going to have to be rewritten. VA buyers are out of luck, because the way VA is written, you can't pay a buyer's agency. The veteran cannot pay a buyer's agency, so it has to come from the seller unless those rules are rewritten. So those are, lenders like you could be affected by it. Sellers, it's supposed to be benefiting the sellers, but honestly, if they don't offer concessions on their home, it may not get shown, especially in the lower price range, right? Ken, I can't afford an extra $8,000 for a commission, so we won't look at that house. We'll go to the next one.
Right.
And then of course, being the seller having dual agency responsibility, or the agent, potential for lots of liability, liability exposure. So who it helps? the attorneys that are filing the lawsuit, they get 33% of the settlement.
Sure.
So at $418 million, I don't know the math, somewhere around $120 million in attorney's fees. And that's just with the NAR. They still have the other big companies they're going after. But there's supposed to be several 100,000 plaintiffs, in other words, class action lawsuit. So we're expecting the plaintiffs are going to get anywhere from 50 to 250 bucks. Yeah, that really makes a difference to upend the whole industry.
Right.
So, who's it going to help? Sellers, I put a question mark by here for the same reason I just said, is that does it help the sellers really? Well, your house may not get shown if you don't pay a commission as much as it would if you offer it. So my suggestion is offer it. Number one, offer it because they'll show your house, but also you're competing against builders who they don't have a problem paying commissions.
Right.
So that's who's going to help is builders. And 80% of my sales are new home construction. So I'm an expert in that area. And that's why I love first-time home buyers, and they pay closing costs. They buy the rate down. They pay the realtor their commission, and so you're going to see realtors steering a lot of their people over to new construction just because there's no question usually if they're going to get paid or not.
Right.
All right. And then of course the builders have NFC financing, sub interest rate financing down in the 4.5 to 4 3/4 interest rate. So, and if you're a seller, you're going to have to compete against these builders offering these concessions, and the builders are crushing it. And with this settlement, they're going to crush it even more. That's why that's my specialty is new home construction for first timers and investors. It's the same house, just a different buyer.
Yeah.
So my first-time home buyers, they need the help. They need the book. They need the 10 steps of the home buying process. I'll coach them through it and everything like that. So they don't want to go alone. And then my investors, a lot of them are 1,500 to 3,000 miles away. They don't want to try to do this from a distance. So I'm a little sheltered when it comes into this because most of my stuff is new home construction. But it is a shakeup in the industry. And it's supposed to come in the middle of July, but it's probably not because the code of ethics have to be rewritten by the NAR. There's so much, all the forms, we don't even have these forms made yet, and they're trying to do this within 90 days. It's not going to happen. So, but if it does, we all have to follow under these new rules. So just be prepared what it is. So that's what I'm doing is bring back my educational piece, my home buying crash course, where I go in for 45 minutes into a builder's model, or we go to a nice hotel. I have a conference room in there or a presentation room, and I'll explain all of this as well as how to best position yourself as a home buyer in this market in these new challenging times.
Knowledge is power.
Oh yeah, knowledge is power, but wisdom is even better than knowledge because wisdom's the right use of knowledge.
Exactly.
So so that's the thing is we've got to kill the ignorance of what's going on in the media. The media. I read the U.S. News and World Report about this, and it was so wrong because of everything. I actually used it to my counterpoints in the argument. It was everything that was out of that article that was. I mean, this is a big national paper that's putting out 50% of what they said was probably misguided. Well,
it's a good thing Kenn Renner's here.
I'm here to tell you. So yeah, well,
Fact-checker.
welcome to Texas, and also in the future for my clients that have been working with me for a long time. Welcome to Florida. We're going to have a great place to do some 1031 tax deferred exchanges, and it gives me an excuse to go to the sunny Florida coast. So
have a safe trip.
All right, thank you.
All right, good seeing you.
All right,